The original Sleepaway Camp was arguably one of the best slasher movies to come out of the later period of the slasher genre's golden age. It was grisly, well shot, and had a black humour running through it that really made it stand out against the mediocrity that was released around the decade. It would be a whole 5 years before a sequel would make its way back to screens, and what would emerge at the end of that time? Well, to say it's a bit of a tonal change is rather an understatement. Sleepaway Camp 2, Unhappy Campers, also known as Nightmare Vacation 2, is a 1988 screwball comedy movie that's been spliced with the DNA of an overly obnoxious and gory slasher film. I think that's probably the best way to describe it, really. It's absolutely and totally tonally different from the first film, and other than a couple of basic pickup themes and plot lines from the first movie that carry over, you could basically treat this film and Sleepaway Camp 3 as part of a completely different series when compared to the original movie. I first had the privilege of seeing this film in the early 2000s, when it was shown at least once a week on the digital TV station, The Horror Channel, here in the UK. Usually it would be shown in the same block as films like Manic Nurses Find Ecstasy and Penetration Angst. It's much less sexual, but yeah, it's one of those kind of movies. The plot's much more simpler than the first movie. It takes place 5 years after the events of the first Sleepaway Camp film, and Angela Baker has disappeared. After the events at Camp Arawak, Angela was arrested, taken into care, and spent a number of years in therapy before eventually having a full sex change operation to complete a transition into a woman. After the sex change, Angela vanished from public view. That is until Camp Rolling Hills opens its doors. The new camp needs counsellors, and Angela masks her past and signs up in an attempt to be the best camper she can be. But Angela has a problem. She's driven quite heavily by a strict moral code. She's firmly into clean living. That means no sex, no drugs, no alcohol, and nothing she deems impure. But rather than just dishing out some strong words or referring any rule-breaking campers to the management, Angela takes matters into her own hands. She kills them. The rest of the movie is then a wacky hijinks as Angela begins slaughtering and hiding the bodies in more and more cartoony ways. And the other camp counsellors scratch their heads in confusion until there's literally only a handful of them left. And even then Angela has to tell them who she is and a bit of a backstory in order to reveal herself. Yes, the counsellors in this are that unaware and stupid. Probably the biggest factor in why the tone of this film varies so differently from the original Sleepaway Camp is that the first film's original writer and director, Robert Hiltzik, had no involvement in this movie's production. And further still, the original film studio behind Sleepaway Camp had no involvement in the production of this movie or Sleepaway Camp 3 either. Both Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3 were produced by Double Helix Films and were both written back-to-back by the same person, Fritz Gordon. And Fritz Gordon is not a real person. It's a pseudonym for Michael Hitchcock, who you'll probably know best for having worked heavily with Chris Guest on his various mockumentary projects, and for more recently contributing towards writing for the Rachel Bloom comedy Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. He's not traditionally known for his writing expertise, and judging on the fact he disowned this script before it even made it to the final edit, I'm assuming he isn't too proud of Sleepaway Camps 2 or 3. As well as being written back-to-back, both 2 and 3 were also shot back-to-back over a 6-week period, and as such both movies very closely mirror each other in terms of tone and vibe. The script flails wildly between some genuinely funny black comedy, some truly awful stupid comedy, and some rather nice, if not a touch cheaply done, gore. I kinda regret having to call it a slasher movie, because traditionally slasher movies have an element of the stalker and the stalked about them. That doesn't happen here really for the most part. For the most part, Angela will see a counsellor do something she doesn't deem appropriate. She'll then wait for them to be alone, which usually takes about 10 seconds after the naughty act is committed. She'll then keep them busy while looking for something to kill them with. She'll sometimes even tell them she's going to kill them. Then she kills them. There's little to no suspense, but I do admire the fact that the script chooses to open by not even beginning to pretend that Angela isn't a psychopathic killer. It means we as an audience can relax into the film knowing the inevitable is going to happen. This isn't art. This isn't some challenging watch you can infer multiple meanings out of. This is a big, self-aware, stupid slasher movie that's incredibly easy on the brain and zooms by at a rather speedy 80-ish minute runtime. But the key thing to take away from this is it's self-aware. It knows what it is. At this period of time in the late 80s, the slasher genre was a dead and buried art. People were past the point of caring about movies like this. Which in some ways made writing a script like this altogether more liberating, because there was no bar anymore. You could experiment freely. But with that does come quite a few perils of the field. The dialogue's nowhere near as sharp as the original, but it is more eccentric. It's distinctly in the Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, Troll 2 territory for dialogue acting. And you really get the vibe that the cast absolutely knew what they were making here and really go all out to try and keep that high energy, campy black humour running right the way through it. It's quite a farce, but a very enjoyable farce. It's genuinely funny in places, the deaths are creative, there's some cracking one-liners from Angela. Depending on how you get on with horror that has comedy elements, I think you'll either click with this right away or immediately take a volatile and violent dislike to it. I don't think there's anyone out there who would watch this and just go, yeah, it's alright. It's a total Marmite movie. Personally, I love it, but I could understand why someone would find this script stupid, derivative and annoying. The Cine and Direction is a bit of an unusual one, honestly, mainly because it's a slasher movie that existed very shortly after the slasher genre had wound down. It's trying to mimic and ape the feel and tone of older slasher genre movies, but with a more modern filmmaking technique and style. And while it's attempting to do that, it's also trying to be a legitimately alright modern slasher movie. Because it's so close to the time when slasher movies were running rampant on video and movie theatre screens, its attempt to mimic comes across as an actual competent filmmaking. They've replicated the feel of the slasher genre, mainly by having people who were involved in the slasher genre shoot the movie. As a result, it does the usual tropes of using shallow depth of field while things are moving in the background, using dark, shadowy shots to hide things in the darkness that can be used to create scares, and they utilise the scenery around Camp Rolling Hills quite nicely in really setting the feel and tone for the camp. This was probably aided no end by the fact that the location they used was an actual real abandoned summer camp. Direction-wise, it's okay. The cast are a bit stiff at times and some of the deliveries are frankly dire, but to me that only enhances the drier, darker comedy moments. The movements around the shot setups and scenery, however, are also pretty good. Everyone seems animate, and other than a couple of moments where people seem to forget they're being filmed and appear to be doing dry runs of their lines, it's otherwise pretty okay. Not brilliant, mind, but again, it's trying to ape the tropes of a particular subgenre, so they were kinda limited with what they could do, really. The director for this movie was Michael A. Simpson. He has 12 directing credits, and most of them were TV specials or TV movies. He did work with Double Helix on at least 3 movies, but other than that, he hasn't done anything massively of note. As an aside, there's also some discrepancy about exactly how many films Double Helix worked on. IMDb has them down as having made 23 films between 1985 and 2007. However, the BFI website says that Double Helix only made 5 films between 1985 and 1992. Which one's correct? I honestly don't know, but I'd be inclined to believe the BFI, if only because they seem easier to verify. Performance-wise, Pamela Springsteen absolutely steals the show. Her cool calmness masking mania is a contrasting flavour of a performance that's truly up there as one of the weirdest acting on film I've ever seen. It's almost weird to think that the role nearly went back to Felissa Rose, who went as far as doing a reading for the part before it was decided that, what with them going for a completely over-the-top, more comedic tone when compared to the first film, she wouldn't be right for the direction they wanted to take. That and she was going to college soon, so timelines weren't great on either side. Pamela owns these films. She has genuine menace hidden behind that overbearing smile. It's a genuinely impressive performance in my opinion. The supporting cast? Well, I mean, they're alright. But none of them are really anything to write home about. They get the tone of the film and they do play ball with it for the most part, but it's a bit like being in a film with Brian Blessed. When Pamela's on screen, you're always going to be playing second fiddle. Finally, and this is probably the worst part, the soundtrack. The film sounds cheap. It's all generic, hard-ish rock and the occasional cheap synthy score piece. And that's about it. None of it, barring the end credit music, is particularly memorable, and it's a total step down from the orchestral and rich-sounding score used in the first movie. I think had they gone down the orchestral route again for this one, it probably would have sounded much, much better and worked with the weird tone that the film was going for more than the generic rock vibe. As it stands, it just comes across as mediocre, and that's at best. Sleepaway Camp 2 was released on VHS in the UK as Nightmare Vacation 2 in 1998 via Nelson Entertainment. As it was released after the 1984 Video Recordings Act was passed into law, it came out as a Certificate 18 and had over 2 minutes of cuts made, including one entire murder scene being removed. In short, they butchered it. In 2004, Anchor Bay released it as part of a DVD set with the other two movies and with the cut 2 minutes or so put back in. But it was still quite poor quality. Honestly, this film didn't really get a decent release in the UK until 2016, when 88 Films oversaw a full restoration for a Blu-ray release. I own this version and I can say they've done an absolutely lovely job. The PQ is nice and sharp and there's a lot of detail on show. While I think there could maybe be a couple more extras for me personally, what extras they do present are very informative and give you a pretty good idea of this film's tones and inspirations. It's only recently gone out of print at the time of recording, so if you want to check this out, my advice is head over to Amazon and snap up a copy before the price starts getting jacked up. Sleepaway Camp 2 doesn't really need a lot of explanation. It's a dark, goofy horror movie with camp over-the-top performances. It knows its source material well and it plays with the genre in multiple ways that I personally found very enjoyable. I highly recommend checking this one out, but for the exact opposite reasons for why I recommended the first movie. This film's cheap, shot quickly, and is cheesy as hell. You feel like some takes were the only takes. With dead cast members still clearly breathing or moving their eyes, there are continuity errors, and probably the most infamous scene is where Angela barbecues one of the campers, only for a match to go out just before she throws it, but it still ignites the barbecue. It's a ridiculous attempt to recapture the slasher genre, and it's rubbish and silly and everything I look for in a good bad movie. Admittedly, there's something missing that at the time of recording I just can't quite place my finger on that stops this film from being a genuine Birdemic or Room type classic. But it's so close it hurts. Don't believe me? Check it out. You'll thank me when you've stopped groaning.